Okay, so I've had quite a few people ask me to let them know how I'm doing some of the stuff that's going on with the speeder bike for the shop. So I thought I'd do a couple of video clips because it'd be a lot easier than just trying to take a bunch of pictures. So what had been done so far on this is kind of what I call first phase one is I had a platform that I cut out, what I'm calling a platform, cut out of plywood that basically is the silhouette looking straight down onto the fuselage of the speeder bike, cut out here, and then up underneath there's been welded by somebody else a bunch of piping that actually helps support up underneath this frame here, and then goes and ties down into these feet that are up underneath that are actually feet from a like lawn chairs that have the rocking effect on them. And then there's been pipes, larger pipes added here so that then rails can be run out from that and just removed whenever needed to be able to transport the bike. Now the next part I have to do is I have to start getting pieces and parts on here ready so that I have anchor points in here before I start putting the foam on here that's going to shape the bike. So I have to make sure I go through and get everything attached that I need to this before I put the foam and such on. Otherwise, once I get all the foam attached to this and start sculpting it, I can't get back into this and get things attached to this wood. So I have to really make sure I've got this all planned out right, or I could leave myself hanging somewhere and not be able to get something attached to the bike. So that's kind of the next step. I'll kind of show here a couple things I'm going to be doing on this. So we'll cut back to this. All right, so this part of the explanation of the bike, I thought it'd be smart to have a model here. This is actually one of the 6-inch black label speeder bikes that come out, that came out a couple months ago. That of course everybody was all hot to get. But to explain the next part that I need to show right here is, what I need to talk about is this right here, which is the handlebars that are coming up. You'll notice, look close if you're familiar with the speeder bikes, there's the main handlebar that comes down and it anchors down into a pivot point down into the fuselage here. And then there's another point over here that basically acts kind of like a strut or support to this piece that comes up here. So essentially, I'm able to have 2 points coming in here that I have to have already in place before I start sculpting this. Otherwise, I can't come back into here and try to dig back into this and try to mount these in here. So the solution I wound up coming up with is basically using some galvanized pipe parts in here. So here you can already see one set in place. And what this is it's a few parts in here. It's a flange, all right, pretty easy to get. A lot of this stuff you can just get at Lowe's. And then I need a short piping that they have here. This one I had to go to brass because they basically had run out of the galvanized parts for this piece. So what it'd be is this would go into here, and then the T would go into here next, and then I would have these pipes then that come in next into here to tee out, okay? And then what it is that, let me get these out of the way. So you notice I had to come in here and determine for sure where the center line was on this, and then figure out where this was going to hit in the fuselage here by a couple different drawings that I'd come up with. And so this is basically showing where the support struts would come off the back, and then this would be where the main handles would be at. So it's actually pretty far up on the fuselage, as you can see here. So, and I want to make sure that these are really solid so that once I tie into them, I don't have to worry about these buckling around anywhere. So that's one of the reasons I went for a larger pipe. And the thing is, what I have to do is that once I get this into place, I'll have to screw this in, get this in, and what I'm going to do is for these parts where these connect, I'm going to be using, initially when I put this in, I'm going to be using some Loctite that will actually, it's like a permanent glue that will actually bond these together once I get it all locked into place, which is what I'll have to do with this here. But the one thing I'll do is I'll have to leave these pipes without the Loctite in it, because the concept I'm going to have is when I get ready to start laying the foam in here, I'm just going to have this in here temporarily until I get the foam blocked around it. And then once I get the foam in place, I can unscrew these and pull them out. And then what I can do is that I can come and I can sculpt around and keep a nice clean plane, and these won't be in my way. And then once I'm done sculpting, then I can come back in, tie back into this again, and that time use the Loctite. And then once these are in place, The idea is that then I'll have to make something that comes out that I can then lock in the parts into. So the solution I wound up coming up with is this right here, which is inside. I'll have to cut this down, of course, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a threaded rod. This is a 5/16 threaded rod, whereas this is a 1/2 inch pipe. Okay, and what I'm going to do is the end of it here would be is that I'm going to have a lock nut at the end that'll lock everything down. Then I'll have 2 sets of washers. I got more washers than what I need here, but I'll have 2 washers against here. Then the part that's the arm coming up will come up this way. Then there'll be another set of washers on the inside, and then I'll do the same thing on the other end. What I can do with these washers here, or these nuts here, is I can tighten them out or screw them out until they're right flush with the end of the pipe here. And then that way the washer will go right up against it, and then by having the nuts on both ends flush against it, it'll kind of keep things from rattling around in there. And the other reason that I went with the 1/2 inch pipe is because, let me do this here real quick, is that I take this off, pull these out, and one thing that you'll notice is, let me just pull this out, this will just take a second, is that these nuts just so happens to be that with the 5/16 inch rod, so that you'll notice here, if I can get up here close enough, here's the interior of that pipe. When this rod goes in, these nuts fit almost perfect right inside there and take a lot of the space in there. I'll just have to do a little bit of wrapping around there, but that keeps the rod from rattling around inside of here. By having those nuts in there, it takes up some of that space, so that'll be able to lock it up. So that'll be the thing that I'll do, and that'll be the last thing I put in when I measure up, and then I'll put in, of course, finally lock in the parts that'll come off of here. So that kind of explains the front parts that I have to put in place. The other thing I have to do is around the front of the bike on the bottom is this plating that basically wraps around where these struts, like these rails, come in. So I'll have to make sure whatever anchors I have to get that in place too to go around these pipes. Because like I said, once I get the foam in place, I can't get back in there. So some other things that I'll have to get in place before I get the foam working is basically this platform comes all the way back and becomes the flat flush piece. That's the back of the bike back here where these engines are, okay? And we decided what we're going to do is, instead of me worrying about what all the interiors look like and stuff, we're just going to make this a flat flush piece that I'll just square off on the back, and it'll be the shape of the outside of these sort of intakes, whatever, the side tanks here. And then so what I have to do is make sure that I get this profile all figured out and get it to scale so that then I can mount it to the back of the bike here. And then another thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to put some sort of like a base into here, probably using a couple 2x4s and length in here, that this will be coming up, probably 2x6 maybe even, is this will come up, and that's where the seating will actually mount onto. I won't put the seat on because I still need to get to the foam, but I have to have at least the blocks in place, so once the foam is carved, then I come in and then can mount the seat in afterwards. So that's got to come in too as well. And then last but not least, what I need to do is on the bottom side of the bike is basically the engine and the intakes here, which is just kind of like a big square box that runs from the back all the way to almost the middle of the fuselage with some details around it. What I need to do is at least come in, because there's a couple of rails of metal here for the framing, is what I'll have to do is come in on each side with some length of 2x4, mount it in, screw it from the top, and get that in place before the foam comes in. And then as well, then get the, figure out what the pattern is for the side of that shape, and then mount it to the sides of that before all this foam and everything comes in, so I can at least get the blocks partly done. And then I can put the foam in. One thing that I did realize after we got finished with all the like welding and stuff like that on this is that one of the things that the welder had come up with, this kind of a cool idea, was built to make it so that these leggings could come up and swing up and then have a piston coming up to the side of the fuselage. But after I started getting into doing this, after this was all done, I realized that actually where this anchor point comes in, it's right here, which if I leave this in place, what's going to happen is that literally slices it right through the tip of this part on here. It really needs to come out from underneath, so I'm probably going to have to at some point, luckily this is just screwed in, I'm going to detach this when I start sculpting, and then at the end, once I figure out what the blocking is going to be up underneath, I'm probably going to actually wind up having to cut these and then run maybe a T across, and then just a pivot point in the bottom of the bike down here, somewhere in behind this pipe here. So it'll still have a swivel point down here as opposed to being attached here. So it's out of the way of the fuselage on the side here. That basically comes down. It's kind of like saddles on the side that come all the way down here. That way I clear it, and then I still get some little bit of actuation on the pedals. If it comes down to it, worst case is if I can't get it to work like that, then I'm just going to have to do them as a fixed pedals, which is fine. It's just, I was trying to add that extra little bling or whatever you want to call it to it. So other than that though, that's the next stuff I have to do, and that's what's going to be happening here for the next day. And then I'm going to be coming in, and then I'll show you how I'm going to start kind of planning out the foam to build out and sculpt out this whole bike fuselage. So keep you guys in touch.